Hey everyone, I'm Angela Stevens, and I'm the CEO to Refocus the Creative Office. I'm also the podcast host to the ADHD Refocus with Angela podcast and Refocus Careers. But I am so excited to introduce my guest today. I interview many people. I think we have over 157 episodes, but this is probably my favorite so far. But on this special Mother's Day month, I have invited my own mother to join me, and that is Martha Myers. And she's joining me today, and you're going to get to know her, but you're going to learn a lot of lessons about what it was like raising me and some of the lessons that I learned. And they were so important to me that I wanted to share them with you. So thank you so much for doing this.
Well, thank you, and I'm thrilled just to get to be here because I'm her mother, and and I did teach her
She
everything.
did. She did. She did. So let me tell you a little bit about her. So the woman can do anything, truly anything. She has owned several businesses. She's worked in philanthropy. She has worked with the Rotary and many things, and we're going to get into that. But this podcast is all about focusing. And I wanted to know up front, what is something that you do on a daily basis when you decide you've got to get a lot of things done in today's world because you're now at a different phase of life. You're retired, she's enjoying life, but it's different. So, but sometimes when you're retired, things you don't have a schedule per se, right? So, how do you focus during the day or the day before?
Well, I plan. I plan, and then sometimes I just have to dive in and do it.
One step
Just
forward. Hmm.
yeah, I just have to dive in and do it. And I was that way when the kids were little too.
Hmm.
You just have to start somewhere.
Yes. So let's go back there, shall we? So I want to tell you a little bit about what my mom was like. This is probably one of the most important lessons that I could ever learn in my life. So when I was younger, my father was a general contractor all my life, and he was what was called the sundown farmer. He would go to work very, very early, but he was up at 4 and 5 in the morning working with cattle, and he would work all day in construction and come home and do cattle again. And all of us worked on the farm. We didn't sit around. It was really a family unit. But all during this time, she was doing the books for my dad, and she was a hairstylist, and she had her own salon, and it was in the basement of our home.
Yeah.
And people would come out. It was actually what, 2 miles out in the country? Isn't that right?
Yeah, but they would come from far and near.
They did. They did. And here's what was interesting. So when we got home from school every day, and I mean not one day, but every day, when we got home from school, we were told to come downstairs, open the door, and greet everybody in that beauty shop. We actually took out rollers. We folded towels. That was actually child labor at that time. I'm joking, but anyway, we were told to greet people, and if we did not do that, we were told to shut the door, go outside, open the door again, and ask everyone how their day was, talk to them, and we had to do that before we could ever talk about ourselves or what was going on with us. And looking back, what a treat. It was such a blessing. And I thank you for that because she did it not with me, but with all of us. And you probably didn't know it at the time, but what an impact you were making in our lives.
No, no one taught me that, and no one told me that. It wasn't written in a book. I just thought it was the right thing to do.
And she did it. So I'm going to take her back even further. So when she grew up, she went to, I want to say this, she went to a one-room schoolhouse, right?
I did.
How many kids were in that school?
Shocky school.
Shockey School in Missouri, in Marshville, Missouri, and there were eight in that school. And growing up, I don't think she had I know she didn't have the encouragement from her parents to go to college or go to school. So tell us what you did. Because she had one of the best jobs that she still talks about today.
Oh,
So can you tell us about that?
oh yes, it was a fun job. And I got that job on my own. Nobody gave it to me. I was probably about a sophomore when I went in and asked my boss Shirley for that job. And she said, "Well, when school started." And she did. She gave it to me when school started. And I worked there 3 years, four. Probably would have worked there longer if they'd have kept me. I went to beauty school and I thought I really ought to make that work.
But back up, that job that she had is one of her favorite jobs that she ever had. And that job was,
Working at the sweet shop as a soda fountain. I'd run up there at school at noon. I was in the high school band, so I'd put down my instrument and I'd run as hard as I could go. And I made sandwiches. I made sandwiches during the lunch hour. And when it was over, I'd run as hard as I could back to school again. And again after school, I came again. And I loved it. Loved it. Loved my boss. And I worked with a lady and I thought she was just a terrible complaint. But she wasn't.
well, bosses, sometimes they're good and sometimes they're bad, but we learn from them, right? So,
Well, she used to be my boss at the sweet shop,
uh,
Arilla. And then when I grew up, graduated, and managed a care center, she was one of my patients. So
yeah.
life turns around.
So we'll get to that. But okay, so when you were working at the sweet shop, if I'm right, you saved your money actually to go to beauty school, right?
Yes, and anything else I needed,
Right.
because I didn't have a lot of money, and I don't guess there was a lot of money to be had.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
yeah, but everybody loved coming out to her shop. And I remember that. I know my older sister, she would actually learn to start cooking, and my mother would tell her what to do during these times. And so we all learned. It was. I just have to stop and say I'm so blessed. I had the best parents ever. I'm in my 50s, and I say that so much today. And so moving forward, she started her own salon, doing my dad's books at the same time, and she was playing the piano for many churches, and she loved doing that, and she was very active, and we had this great life, and it was we lived on a farm, and they had nothing, and I need to find this picture, but my dad built one of the first houses. Can you explain that? What was it? It was the first electrical house or something.
all electric home.
All electric home in Marshfield. I'm so proud of him. He passed away. I wish he was here. I would love to just say, how cool is that, right? I didn't realize at the time, but it was a beautiful place. But growing up, you would think life was great. But I want to share these lessons with my mom or with you from my mom, because I had somebody ask us, let me back that up. I saw a guy named Brad Brown, who I grew up with,
Oh,
and years later, and he said, "Your family has gone through so much." And he said, "I think if there's one word that describes your family, that word would be resilient." And I thought, wow, that's such a great statement. And here's why. This amazing woman, that's my mother, has lost three children out of five children. That's something I don't think anyone should ever have to go through. And just to touch on that lightly, she lost her first child, which was
my very first,
very
very
sad.
first.
Very sad. And people think, oh, you have another child, but you went through a very hard time because at that time your family wasn't very supportive of your marriage,
No,
right?
no.
And that had to be tough. And I just wish I'd been there for her in some way, right? But I want to say this, losing an infant, I can't say I don't know what that's like. If somebody's listening to this and it might have been years ago for you, but it could be today for someone else. What advice would you give to them if they've lost an infant?
Well, you must have faith. You must have faith. because without faith, you're just gonna die without it because you're not gonna have anything to hold on to.
Yeah.
And so you must have that faith. And I don't have the answer to why.
Right.
I don't. I wish
But
I did.
but how does a person go on? Is it just time?
Time is a great, means a lot.
Yeah.
You know, time, and then it, time is just worth a lot, and you don't forget.
You don't
You
forget.
don't ever forget.
And her
It's
name was Katrina Joe.
mhm.
Yeah.
And it's still there.
It's still there.
And we still got, and that's been how many years, thousands of
Many.
years ago.
And no, you're not that old. But and not to move on, but if that wasn't sad enough, then and I don't want to make her cry, but this podcast
It's
is
real.
it's real, and this podcast is to show you the resilience of this woman and how she got through because I could sit here and tell you the story, but coming from her, you'll get it. But the second thing was then we were moving on with life. Everything was great. Then she had my older sister, Valerie, and
And Andy.
and Andy, and they were like 2 years apart. And then I think, what, 5 or 6 years later, you had me, and then life was wonderful at that point for you, right? No, just kidding. Anyway, but yeah. So anyway, and then and so we they were moving on and resilience, right? But then I had a little sister who was 10 years old and I was 16 and I shared a room with her and her name was Shelley and she passed away of a liver disease and it was hard for everyone, right? That was
Hard for the family, hard for neighbors, hard for her schoolmates.
yes, who
It was
still remember her today, years later, right? But I want to ask you this because there's something I remember so poignantly. I saved this for you. I have this huge box of cards from people that we don't even know. And if you hear this, we thank you. We still have those cards. But it was very sad. She went through jaundice, and it was just, you don't ever want a child to pass away. You just don't want that, right?
no
So my question to you on that would be when you have a child that's developed their personality, right? And they're 10, right? They're in your life and you lose them. Many people have lost children at that age. How do how do you go on? Number one, I want you to think about that for a minute. That's a tough question, but I remember that there were times when we got all the cards, all the visits, people came over, and then they stopped. They stopped. They stopped. And if you know someone who's lost someone, I would say if you did anything for them, it's so important to check back 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and just say, I'm thinking of you, or send a card and say, I'm so sorry, or how can I help? Or is there anything I can do? Or if they have kids, offer to take their kids for a while, right? Um, because that's so hard. And I'm so sorry that you went through that. I have one child. I can't imagine going through that. And I admire her so much. And so, but today, if someone lost a child that was in that age frame, I know that's different, right, from having an infant. So, any advice?
Shelley was little and she was blonde and she was cute and everybody loved her. And
She
so
would be in Queen Contest and win them all. Yeah.
she did. And anyway, but she was there and she thought the world was hers, and it was.
Hmm. We adored her.
It was, and everybody else did too.
Hmm.
Everybody else loved her, and um, she would. Her teacher told me. She said, everybody wanted to tie her shoes, and she was little Shelley was no dummy. She just let them do it. I
It
mean,
was funny. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so Shelley was a blessing to have, as all the kids were, the ones we lost, the ones we raised. You know, uh,
And it affected all of us differently. We didn't have counseling back then. We had our church,
no,
who was wonderful. But looking back today, if you go through that, counseling is really important because it affects each person differently. I would say, wouldn't you
oh,
agree with
oh
that?
yes, very.
And I remember to the day, one day I was having such a hard time. I always mention this. I think it's worth mentioning because this is a shout out to teachers. I was 16 and it was around my 16th birthday she passed away. And it was the fall and that was my sophomore year or my junior year. I was sitting in class and one of my teachers in Marshfield, Missouri, noticed I had a few tears coming down my eyes. And she gave me a note and she said, Angela, can you take this to the principal's office? And I did. And I read it and it said, I know you're hurting. Keep this and use this anytime you need it. And that meant so much to me, more than you can imagine. So if you're a teacher, if you do things like that, kudos to you. That's impressive. And I appreciate that so much for other people because it's hard. It's hard. School's hard, right? High
It is
school,
hard.
school's hard, and kids don't know what to say to you, even when they're in high school. So yeah, so that was hard. Any other advice on that for for getting through that for the family? I mean,
Well,
I would say one more thing before you begin. My sister and my brother went away to college, and I was left with my mom and dad.
hmm,
And I loved it, but it was really hard to watch them go through the morning stages of that time. And um, uh, I don't even know what to say about that. That was just so hard. But one day I was a cheerleader, I was a twirler, I was a gymnast, I was a
mhm.
uh, 2 mile runner. I was, what else did I do? A queen contest. I don't even, she made me do everything. If you were her child, you were in band. You did not have a choice. You were in band. So I played the flute and I was a twirler. Okay, there we go. But one day, kids can be cruel. And I don't remember what happened, but I came home and my mom stopped everything. And makes me cry. She made a milkshake for me, a milkshake, and just stopped cutting hair. Just took the time for me, and those little things you never realize how much they affect you. So yeah, we'll move on, or I'll start crying more. But anyway, okay, so let's move forward. So anyway, then we live life, and in that time, what else? Oh, look at this. This is awful. So what else happened? So then she she can be anything she wanted. She was a travel agency owner. She was a gift shop owner. She was a Borghese makeup manager with Macy's, which is now or Famous Bar, which is now Macy's. Let's see, what else did you do? What do I forget? She was the first woman Rotary president in her area. And here's the thing. My mother, even though we went through all of this, those experiences, I would say, can tear a family apart or they can bring you together. And they brought us together. Wouldn't you say?
And that wasn't, and it's not just little kids
Yeah.
that you lose. It
Yeah.
makes a difference because we also lost Andy.
Yeah. So I was getting to that. I was trying to make something happy here, but we're just going to go right on into it. So, let's go back. So my father was the most amazing father. I don't know what I did in life to, well, I gave him a hard time, I'm sure, but I don't know what I did in life to deserve such great parents. And the reason I say that is because I don't think my dad ever said an unkind word to me, ever. She did, of course, but no. And-
Mothers.
right, exactly. But he was so understanding and so forgiving. And yeah, and so he had Parkinson's for 25 years. And this woman took care of him for 25 years. And he had the brain surgery like Michael J. Fox did. And it was a great moment. I will never forget walking into his hospital room and he said, "Look, no shaking." And I was like, wow. And then he lost weight. And we'll make this quick, but fast forward, the anesthesiologist, they accidentally punctured his vocal cord and they tried to fix it, but he had a feeding tube for 6 years, and that was terrible. It was terrible. However, when I would ask my father this question, I would always say, you know, would you do it again? Would you do the same surgery again? And he immediately said, absolutely, because he would shake all the time. And so, so this woman took care of him forever and a day. And I hope I can be the woman she is in my lifetime. But we'll move on to my brother. So 3 years ago, my brother did not have any family of his own, lived on their farm. He had purchased their farm, and all of a sudden, he had problems with his eyesight and he had macular degeneration. So I'd like to give a quick call out. If you have issues with your eyesight or your family does, please get checked out. The earlier detection, the earlier, the better. But it went fast for him. He pretty much lost his eyesight. And um, he got kidney disease and diabetes and heart disease. And during that time, he was between jobs and we tried to get him Social Security. I did all the paperwork, I helped with that. There is a podcast that I did with an attorney named John Gold. And we talked about bankruptcy, but we talked about Social Security and how not to get into that between phase where you have no benefits. Because when I tried to get him Social Security, he had lost his vision and they said he had to work 8 more quarters. He was he had lost his vision, and he it was there was no way. And then they said he could do disability SSI, but he would only get $800, and he could not own more than $2,000. So make sure you check into that. But we made him continue to go. We took him to the doctor, and he didn't make it. I will say, on the night of Thanksgiving, I stayed with him and he passed away the next day. And I got to spend that last night with him. And so there's blessings in resilience, right? And blessings in memories. And so I would really emphasize that to you. So, but going back, there you go. Anything you want to say about that?
If you think about something, just go ahead and do it. If you think about going and seeing someone, taking someone, just go ahead and do it. Don't wait, because tomorrow may not be here for you or for them. So just don't wait. Just do it.
It's so true. It's so true. And so, one thing I did want to mention, we talked about children losing a spouse. I have not had that happen to me, and I don't even know if I could do it. But I want to talk about that because when my dad passed away, they were married how many years?
58.
58. 58. That's pretty cool. You had to put up with a lot, didn't you? Okay, he's not here to defend himself, so that's not a fair question. But it wasn't easy at times, right? I mean,
No.
you owning a business together, uh, it's got its challenges, right? But today, if somebody, younger or older, lost their spouse, um, what advice could you give them?
Well, you can't give up because of your family. You got to keep going if you have family at all. And if not family, there you got some family. So you can't give up for them
Yeah,
because that's not going to help you or them.
right, right, right. And it's so true. And you were so good to him. You were so good. She was so good to all of them. And and there's two of us left. She has two daughters, me and my older sister, and we'll put a picture of Valerie on here as well. But the other thing I wanted to talk to you about is marriage. So you had a great marriage. Okay, they fought, but yeah, a lot of us do, right? But what is the key to a good marriage?
Don't hold a grudge. Don't hold a grudge. And a lot of people say, don't go to bed at night mad. Well, that's good too, but I cannot say
We're
that.
Italian. That doesn't work for us. Sorry. Yeah.
I cannot say that I didn't do that. But the next morning, you're all right.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, it
Yeah.
because you've
And
got
you pick
other
your
things.
battles, right?
Mhm.
You pick your battles. One of the best things that she ever told me, I asked her this one time, and I asked her, I said, "What is your advice for a good marriage?" I think I asked her that when I got married the second time. And she said, always have something to look forward to. So
Very true.
why did you say that? I love that. Why did you say that?
Because it didn't make you focus on the bad part, on the bad things. It made you focus, look forward to things. And it might be a card game with friends. It might be going to town. There was always something to look forward if you make it.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I think that's good for anybody, anybody today in this world. Um, that is that is great. And then as a mother, she's my rock. Um, when we were younger, if we wanted to go and be an astronaut, she would go and find out how to do it. And by golly, we would be an astronaut today. If I said that I'd be on that plane or on the building. But it's true. Nothing was impossible. And I know we say that to our children, but with her, she meant it. And we all ended up being business owners and entrepreneurs. And we worked very hard. I remember my husband now, Daryl, who said, when he met me, he said, "Are you going to work as hard as your parents do when you retire?" And I looked at him and I said, "Yeah, yeah." And I thought, and so are you, but going forward, but it is true. And and the thing is sometimes, we can get mad at things in life or we can get sad, but it's really laughter, right? That is the key. One time, she and I have to say this. My role in my life, and I truly mean this, is to make every day of her life so great as much as I can, because one person should not have had to go through so much, but she did. And those lessons in life helped me to face the things that I faced in my life. And uh, many times getting through my divorce, I had a little boy. She was there. She was there to tell me. If you don't know me, I've had 3 surgeries on my right arm, and I have neurogenic thoracic outlet syndrome. And many times, I had a business. I would sit on the floor, and she would have a pencil and paper, and she would write everything I needed to do because I couldn't write with my hand. And I have this term for her. I call her the pusher. And she is the pusher, let me tell you. And you know why? Because I would be so tired or my hand would hurt or something. And she would say, "Well, let's just do those 2 more things you need to get done." And I would say, "Listen, I get it. Not today." And she would say, "No, today. We're going to get it done." And I would get really angry at her sometimes, but then she would make me laugh. And I think that's what made
And I'd
me,
laugh too.
yes, I think that's what makes me hopefully a good mom because when my son would get so irritated that I would just get him to laugh and everything was much better, right? And my son has ADHD growing up, and that's our business. We create products that help you focus and refocus. Later on in life, I found out I had ADHD. I think I've had it my whole life. You missed that diagnosis somehow. No, I'm joking, but it
Never
didn't
heard of
matter.
it.
Well, we didn't hear of it then. And so, but she found a way. She always found a way. So what's in it now for your life?
Seeing you be successful and to raise your child and to be just to be happy.
Yeah, life's too short, right? She has one grandchild. I had one child, and she adores him, and he's pushed every one of our buttons, every single
Every
one of them. He's a co-founder in our company of Refocus. But it's interesting how life brings you from one frustration to something great, which was when he was diagnosed with ADHD in school. It would be very frustrating. It took all of us to get him out of bed. And I'm not kidding. He's going to
to,
hate us for
to
that,
get him through school.
Exactly. But looking back, his best memories were at the farm with my parents and with me, hopefully. And he was a child actor, and we would go to LA, and we would take my mom, we'd bring her out there, and she would take him. And so we've had good times. And so I think the lessons we want to leave with you on this Mother's Day and any day is embrace the moment, and don't, if you want to call your mom, and if you don't have a mom, you might call an aunt or somebody that you care about, and just call them or go see them and just show up. Just show up, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes if you're waiting for an invitation, you're never going to get it, right?
No, because they won't think of it, but you'll surprise them.
Yeah. And I want to go back one last thing. So talking about careers a little bit. So when we wanted to do the things we wanted to do, my sister wanted to be a travel agent. Now, my sister is older. She's in her 60s, but she wanted to be a travel agent. And back then, this is years ago, that didn't exist. There was like one school, and you had to go to Kissimmee, Florida, right?
Yes.
And then part of it was online, or not online. It had a book, and it was what, over the computer or something. I don't even know what they did back then. And the other part was she had to do it in person. And when you told the counselor about this, what did the counselor say to you?
He said she just needs to go to SMS or something
Or
like
just a
that.
regular college? And nobody supported her on that. And
Oh,
guess
no.
what? This little Italian woman did not stop there. She just kept going. And it was awesome because she did it, and she went to school, and she has had a travel agency for
We all drove
years.
down to that school.
Yeah, we did.
I didn't just send them
And
on
we
a
all
plane.
cried on the way home. Yeah, yeah. And so that was one. My brother, he worked for my dad in construction, and my mother knew that wasn't for him, right?
Mm-mm.
And so, what was the advice you gave my brother? I remember this. Do you remember?
I don't remember, but he worked for a pharmacy instead during high school.
But he worked for my dad. Remember your husband, and but it didn't work out or something. And she said, "You're gonna figure something out. You're gonna go to a trade school or college."
Oh, yeah.
What was it? Yeah,
It's not over when you get out of high school.
that's it. That's it.
Mm-mm.
And she always said, I don't care what you do something. Go to college, go to trade school, figure something out, right? And then when I went to college, I went to a traditional college, Drury University, and loved it. And I loved it. And then I worked in several different roles in media, and it was my dad actually, who I worked for a recruiting company at the time, and he said, why don't you start your own? And that was so foreign to me, that to think that you guys could think I could do it on my own. And you'll love this really quick. So I needed these books, and they were $500. And back then I said, I can't get these books. They're $500. And do you remember what you said?
something like you can't get along without them or
You said, well, how are you going to get your leads? And I went, I don't really know because we didn't have the internet then. And she said, buy the books. The other thing was, this will take me back in history, was the BlackBerry. And we would leave the house, right? Because the phone would ring. This is so funny. The phone would ring. We would leave, and I would say, I've got to get back. I got to get back to the house. And she's like, why? And I go, because I'm waiting on a call. And I would just sit there and just wait. And the BlackBerry came along, and I said it would be so nice because I could, have my, I couldn't get my email. And she said, how much is the BlackBerry? And I said, $500, I think. And she said, get the BlackBerry. And that was it. And that was all that was said about that. And then okay, so that is it. I have can I say one last story? And you know what it's gonna be.
I'm not sure. There's
This was not planned.
there's
We did
so
not have a
many.
script for this. I just want you to know that, okay? We had no script, but this all comes from the heart. And I adore this woman, and I wish everyone had a mom like hers. And if you don't on this Mother's Day, please take advice from her. She is vibrant and she embraces life with grace and compassion, and she forgives people. I'm gonna cry again. Okay, stop. Okay, all right. But I have to tell you this one story because it's my claim to fame. You know what it is? Yeah, okay. So I'm gonna go into it and then we're done here. All right. So picture this. So I was a gymnast and I was a competitive gymnast all my life. Okay. So since like what, third grade, right? And all my life. And it was high school and it was the last year. And for some reason, someone knew someone on the school board, and they told me that I could no longer do gymnastics at all, like during the games, like, with the handsprings, the back tucks, all of that, right? Well, we had done a thing where it would go J, A, Y, S, and I would be like, back spring, back spring, back spring. And I loved it. I loved it. And so it was the end of the year, and we were going, they, they were going on a family vacation to Colorado to go skiing. Most children would go, but no, I was loyal to my team, and I decided I was going to stay with my grandmother, and I was going to go to I think we were going to state, right? So it was I didn't do any gymnastics, and in today you have to do gymnastics. So I'm sure anybody that's young listening to this, you're like, what? But it's true. All right, so I was in theater and we had it was state tournament something, and I was done halfway through. So the game was going on, and the team would break out on the basketball court. And then something hit me, and I looked up into the audience and I see my parents, and I get this look of, oh dear, oh dear. And all of a sudden they broke out, and I just went and I was like, boom, boom, boom. And everybody's like, J A Y S. And the crowd's going nuts. And it was just like so awesome. I just like, that's my favorite memory. And my mother, and this went on and on. And the coach was saying, you better stop. You better stop right now. And I was like, okay. And they'd break out again, and I would be like, Jay, hey, and it was just awesome. It was so awesome. And anyway, so I didn't think much of it. But my mother leaned over to my sister, and what did you say to her?
I said, make Angie plane reservation for Monday because she's going to need it.
And my sister said, really? And she said, yeah. And I didn't think so. So Monday morning comes around, and I'm sitting, it's first hour, and the thing rings, and it says, it says, and it says, Angela Stevens, please come to the office. And I went, oh dear. So I go to the office, and we didn't have cell phones back then. I'm sitting across from the principal, and he looks at me and he said, you know what you did was wrong. And I said, okay. And he said, therefore, you have been kicked off the cheerleading squad. You have lost your letter, which I thought was very drastic. And you have been suspended for 9 days from school. Yes. And today it's required that you are able to do those things. So I sat there and I said, may I use your phone? And I went in the other office and I called my sister's agency and I said, does she really have a ticket for me to go to Colorado? And she said, yes. And I said, okay. And I went back into the principal's office and I sat down and I said, are we done? And he said, yeah. Why? And I said, I'm really, I'm really not, I can't come back to school for 9 days, right? And he said, yes. And I said, great, because I'm going to go skiing. Can I leave right now? Because I'm out of here. And I did it. And oh my God, it was like the best feeling in the world. We had the best vacation ever. I'm not kidding. Okay. So we're going to end this podcast, but this is great. 20 years later, okay, 25 years later, I run into the principal and he said, may I talk to you for a moment? And I said, I guess. And he said, do you remember when you were doing, and I said, of course, how could I remember? It scarred me for life, but, and he said, I couldn't tell you at the time, but I was sitting there going, yes, yes, that's so awesome. He's like, but I couldn't say a word because I was the president of the school board. I couldn't say a word. And I was like, what? I'm like, you what? And he said, I know, but he goes, that took such courage. And he said, and what a go-getter you are, and you were gonna be so successful in life, et cetera, et cetera. So
And you were.
well, thank
You
you.
are.
Thank you. Thank you. But anyway, so I hope you have a wonderful Mother's Day with your mother. And if your mother's not with you, go see someone that's like a mother to you and give them a big hug because I'm fortunate and I just wanted to share my mom with you. And I wanted to tell you how great she is. And if you are at odds with your mother for any reason, fix it. Just fix it, right? Right?
Amen.
Yeah.
That's right.
So from both of us,
Happy
happy Mother's
Mother's
Day.
Day.